there is no emotion. It's like they've muted themselves from anger, from love, from happiness, and they just live within this really narrow bar. If you don't feel that, that's not normal.
Today, Ben Coomber, men's performance coach and best-selling author.
Men are struggling mentally because a lot of us are not building things that matter anymore. Previous generations were building roads and homes, forms of communication and aeroplanes and all sorts of stuff. We actually are seeing the world that we live in totally differently. Deep down in everyone, there's a real yearning to create something, to be something. And the path to that is through. Soldiers will go to war, something will happen, one man will get PTSD, the other man won't. So we know there's an opportunity to go into the subconscious and look at that memory imprint and say, and that's been an absolute game changer for me. Why?
Today, I'm joined by Ben Coomber, men's performance coach, best-selling author, and someone who speaks honestly about the emotional side of health and what most people avoid. His work goes beyond training and nutrition into the behaviours and emotions that actually drive change. This conversation is for anyone who wants a healthier relationship with their bodies and with themselves. How are you today, Ben?
Mate, I'm awesome. Really good.
Well, if anyone's got to be awesome, it's you, right? Because you kind of put your money where your mouth is on the brand there, haven't you?
I try, yeah.
I know you've just recently come back from Dubai. Did you have a nice time over there?
I did, yeah. And I know that most listening to this podcast are into self-development and expansion of self. And I can't vouch any more highly for what changes of environment do to the soul. And getting around different people, different thinkers. Like before we came on, we were talking about your weekend in Cornwall. And for you, that was a beautifully nourishing environment that brought you down to earth, back to nature, back to what's real. On the flip side of that, Dubai took me to a place of pure expansion, pure possibility, big thinking, big minds. And it's so important. And sometimes we can sit here and think, oh, I don't have the answers to my problems. And that old adage, you can't fix your problems with the same thinking that created your problems. So what do we need to do? And sometimes it is a change of environment, talking to a different person, taking yourself away for a day, like maybe being as bold as going, do you know what? I'm going to take myself on holiday to Bali for a week and flip the script. And honestly, what that can do for the soul, the mind is life-changing. So yeah, Dubai for me was a life-changing trip.
I love what you mentioned about growth. It reminds me of when I was a child, we got a goldfish and we were trying to choose what tank to buy for the goldfish. And because it was so small, I wanted to get this small one. And the man said to me, the fish will grow into the size of the goldfish bowl that you buy. That sounds like what you were just saying. By being in a different environment, surrounded by the right type of people, the people that perhaps reflect the person that you're looking to become in the future, people that are ambitious, people that think the way that you do now or that you want to think in the future. It sounds like it's been really beneficial to you.
And I think as a man, there's a part of us that on a, like on a primal level, we like challenge, we like mission. And I think when a man loses his way, he loses his sense of mission, his sense of purpose, his sense of why am I here? What am I doing? And that doesn't mean you need to have it kind of all figured out, but you want to be walking a path that feels purposeful. And as a man that's walked a path, I'll say back to purpose, back to truth, is so important. So if you're not in a situation right now where you feel like you get up every day and you're like, yeah, I want to seize this day, I feel purposeful within my day, you have to fix that because it pulls you forward. Like, so Dubai was an expanding trip. It pulled me into my future because it showed me like, Ben, actually, you're playing at 50%, mate. Do you want that thing over there, what you're capable of? Because I believe so many of us are capable of unbelievable things and we just tap on the surface. But if in your current environment, with your current job or business, your current friendship group, if it's not challenging you, you won't grow. And that's where you do need to have the confidence to say, right, let me join a new group or sign up to a coaching program or buy that book and actually read it this time. Because if you're doing the same things with the same people in the same environments, getting the same results, something's got to change.
That's so, so important and such a great reflection. I'm really happy for you on that front though, just as a friend that you managed to get out there and to get that, because it's not necessarily something you can realize easily for yourself, is it? Sometimes it takes those reflections of others to measure yourself, if that's the right way of looking at it, against others, and just to ask yourself, what do I really want? Because it's okay to realize that you don't want that thing ahead of you, but I think it has to be a decision, not something that's governed by fear. You talked about how that experience pulled you. I think sometimes when people are motivated, they're motivated with that push motivation, which sometimes is
Mm,
about fear, is about failure, is about other things. But when you have that pull motivation, it's like, I want this. This is pulling me. This is motivating me. This is what I want. And I'm moving towards it. And I'm really getting that energy from you. Would you say
mm.
that's accurate?
Yeah. So I'm going to share a story with you. My whole like teenage and 20s, I spent my whole time building myself and my business through fear and lack of, trying to find worth in accomplishments and accolades and the size of my business, etc. And basically, that energy that I brought to my life, to my business, made me ill, chronically ill. And I remember when I got really ill, I got a therapist and I started talking to my therapist and we were unpacking various things. And I was reflecting on something that was happening in my therapy session with a friend. And he was a man, he was also a business owner. We talk a lot. And I remember recording, it was a voice note on WhatsApp. I love a voice note. And I remember saying to him, I'm scared of doing what my therapist told me to do because I'm scared I'll lose my edge. And fear is a very powerful motivator. And I knew and felt that it was my edge. Okay, if I don't feel enough, I'll drive myself forward. If I don't feel worthy, I'll do more things to become worthy. Now, we don't need to unpack in this moment all of the layers of that from my childhood, but I had an inflection point. I'm like, you can keep going, you can keep pushing, you'll probably stay ill because you'll just keep pushing and pushing it with that same energy. So the last couple of years of me as me being unpacking all of that because I'm still ambitious. I still want to reach my potential, see what I'm capable of, but I want to do it from a place of love, of opportunity, of abundance, of experiencing life rather than being like, not enough. And it's a totally different energy. It's expansive, it's freeing, it's self-motivating and it pulls you forward because you're expanding into your own future rather than being pushed from behind. And it's a really difficult journey. I'm not going to tell anyone listening to this that it's easy. I've had to unpack a lot of stuff, which I know you've had as well. But I don't believe anyone will ever reach their potential coming at it from a place of lack, not enough. You got to flip it. And everyone deserves to flip it because everyone is a beautifully powerful human. Every man, every woman deserves to reach their potential and live their soul's mission. I believe we're on this planet to have a mission. I believe that. I believe deep down in everyone, there's a real yearning to create something, to be something. And the path to that is through the past, because most of us live with our past hanging behind us on 10 different anchors, is working out how to get rid of them so that we are free to live exactly as we should do.
Oh, so, so beautifully articulated. It reminds me of when I was a PT. Sometimes, and it was mostly women, I have to say, they would come to me and tell me they wanted to lose weight, let's say. And I would ask them what's driving that decision. And they would say, because I hate myself. And I
Mm.
said, oh, okay. So when it gets really difficult and you have to make a difficult decision, I hate myself is going to be what motivates you to do that, is it? And it comes back to what you just said. Very rarely does meaningful change come from a miserable place. It just it just doesn't, or at least it might do, but it won't last, you know. That self-punishment, that awful self-critique all the time, it's relentless. It builds and builds and builds and builds, and you end up ill, like you say. Been there
Mm.
many times. You'd think I'd learn the first time, but unfortunately I didn't. Took me a couple of goes before I got there. But I mean, you sort of alluded to it already, but I mean, the big question I like to start with is, how did you become Ben Coomber?
Through a constant path of self-discovery. So when I was younger, I moved around a lot as a kid. My parents were in the military. My dad was, and that meant we moved like every 18 months. So we're kind of like a nomad within our own country. You'd make a friendship group, then you'd leave it, and then you'd constantly be starting again, starting again. And in many ways, that was a curse, but in many ways, it was a gift. And I became incredibly self reliant. I was able to start again, build again, be again. And I think the big advantage is when I left school, I basically didn't really have any friends because I was in a military boarding school and everyone came from really far away, some from Hong Kong, like, and very lucky to an extent to go to a school in that way, very like privileged. But there's also a huge amount of downsides as well to that kind of like environment. Anyway, I finished school when I was 18. I was like, wow, I don't have any life experience. I've never worked a job. I've never done so many of the things that people outside of a boarding school with because everything's kind of done for you in a way. I was like, I need to get out in the world. And what that meant is I didn't have any powerful voices in my ears. So at 18, my parents lived abroad. All my friends had gone. It was just a clean slate again. Whereas so many people at 18 have the weight of so much expectation from parents. So what are you going to do now? You're going to go to uni? What do you mean you're going to get a job? What kind of job are you going to get? And then your friends are like, oh, we're going to Leeds Uni. What are you doing? And it's like, you just got this sea of what everyone wants you to do. And it's then really hard to listen to your own truth. And I genuinely believe a huge amount of people's midlife crises are because they followed a path that wasn't for them for long enough to then go, shit, I am living someone else's life. And it's now broken me. And I need to go through that soul searching period where I'm like, where is my truth? For some people, it's a short, okay, I want to change jobs. And for some people, it's a 5, 8 year journey. And that's fine. But I was very lucky that when I was 18, I was like, what do I want to do? And the first step was I wanted to earn money. So I got 2 jobs, which was great because that afforded me flexibility because I was earning quite a lot of money. And the second thing is I wanted to pursue what I thought was my calling at the time, which was stage acting. Now through that journey, I didn't make it. I trained to become a personal trainer, blah, blah, blah. But that was a very unique experience for me because I was able to act from a place of truth right from the age of 18. Unfortunately, what fueled it was a sense of lack. But I've got there in the end and I'm 39, so it didn't take too long.
I mean, one of the things when we met at that Red Bull event, one of the things that really hit me was you said something. I say this all the time, but I very rarely hear others say it. And you said to me something about being a truth seeker. And
Mm.
a few times within the language you used when we were talking, you sort of used words like honest and truth, and I sort of thought, this is really interesting. I've never heard, especially another bloke, talk about those sort of things. So to me, being a truth seeker is the most important thing to me, because when I was younger, I had many reasons to not trust people, to not trust life. So I always seeked out what was true, because I knew it was stable and reliable, and whether I liked it or not. And that's the bit that I'm sort of edging towards, is those moments later in life that you speak about when somebody has followed other people's ideas, other people's preferences, other people's ways of what they think you should do. And it's always, well, not always, I'm sure in many cases it's well-meaning. People care about you and they're looking at your life through their value system or their belief system, and they want what's best for you. But that doesn't really mean that's what's best for you, right? And I think there's that moment later in life when you reflect and you ask yourself, why am I so unhappy? Like, what's going on here? And you have to look at the truth. And then you realize in many cases, a lot of people, they've created these little narratives that are helpful, because they get you to keep going, but they're not necessarily true. And coming to terms with the fact that there's elements of your life, there's people in your life, places in your life, jobs in your life, whatever it is, where you've kind of been lying to yourself, you've kind of been white knuckling, and now you've got to face the music. That's a really hard thing to do. So I don't know whether you faced a moment like that, and I'm sure you've worked with people that have, but what do you do when you get to a moment like that?
It's difficult. So one of the most powerful self-development tools I use proactively with myself and teaching other people that I coach is breathwork. And the reason why I love it is because I find it's something that forces you to really confront a truth and an edge about yourself. So, for example, you might sit in a therapy session and you might talk about something poignant in your life, or you might talk to a fellow man, woman, and something comes up and it's like, oh, you do this because of something that happened in your childhood and you became hyper vigilant, and that meant you needed to control as many variables as you wanted in your life so that you felt in control, made you feel safe, made your nervous system feel safe, which is really common. um, Now, knowing that is one thing. Walking the path to truth to set yourself free of that is something completely different. And that's why I'm a huge fan of something like breath work, because you have to enter into that subconscious conversation and dialogue with yourself. So when you do things like breath work, psychedelics, trauma release therapy, there's moments in the therapeutic journey where you have to meet your edge. You have to face that moment and you either lean in or you lean away. So one of the reasons I'm a fan of going away and doing certain experiences, and it might not be that you travel abroad to do things, it might be that you travel an hour down the road to do a workshop of some description that is around self-development or breath work or something, is you go to a different environment where hopefully safety is created. So you are allowed to really be yourself, at least on that day, in that moment, with people that do not know you. And sometimes the way to transformation is to put yourself in environments where you don't feel judged. So if I did certain things or someone did certain things with lots of their friends, they wouldn't relax, they wouldn't let the guard down. And to develop yourself, you have to let your guard down. So I used to go away to these experiences and I used to get the safety to challenge my ego, because the ego is the thing that's keeping me safe, the false self. It's a thing that we create to keep ourselves safe, often through our childhood experiences. And what gave me the confidence to keep building on that is these experiences that I kept putting myself through. And I suppose with self development, you in theory should be reflecting on things that you do. So, for example, if you go to a therapy session and you leave feeling better, lighter, freer, you reflect on that and go, well, it was difficult. It wasn't easy talking about my emotions or whatever, but I'm going to do it again because I feel better for it. And this is where you build confidence with anything. It's like, okay, I did a meditation today. It wasn't easy, struggled to sit still, but I feel better for it now. So the hard thing gave me a reward. So I do more of the hard thing. And in the journey of truth seeking, I suppose it's something you build on. You start with a small truth that you're comfortable to kind of unpack and walk along the journey on. And then you start to confront these big truths and you're like, oh, wow, okay, this is pretty freaking big. But I have the confidence now that facing this truth sets me a bit more free. And we then have to know, like, if someone's listening to this right now and they're like, oh, listen to Ben and Johnny, they feel really free as people. Well, if we're saying to you the path to freedom is using these tools and walking this journey, then you have to have confidence that those are the tools that you use to free yourself. And at every step of the journey, you're going to have to face a truth. And I look in the eyes of so many men, because I only coach men, and the big thing that they struggle with is the volume of truth that they've got to work with. They'll like sit in front of me and they're like, whoa. And then they feel where they're at and they're like, whoa, like there's so far to walk. And I'm like, there is, but it's bloody worth it.
Mm.
And all you've got to do is get over, which is usually what's happening, is the shame and the guilt associated to what's there. We've all had things that have happened in our past that are bad. And it's the quickest you can get over just the pure shame and guilt that those things even exist, you get to progress yourself.
Yeah. I mean, again, beautifully put. It reminds me of that. One of my favorite sayings is the freedom that you're looking for is found in the thing that you are avoiding. And you
Mm,
mentioned reflection there. One of the things that I often find interesting is how easily people confuse reflection with inner criticism, or at least it feels like it starts on the same pathway. And then there comes a
mm,
point where you get to decide, am I going to reflect without judgment and look over this behavior, this choice, this situation that unfolded, this experience? Or am I going to judge myself for it? Am I going to say, oh, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have done what sort of things do you try to encourage and put in place with people when you're dealing with reflections to stop them from leaning too far into the inner critic? Because another thing I'll add to that is in some cases that inner critic is telling you something that you're doing wrong, and perhaps you should listen in some cases,
mm,
but it's not
mm,
always the case. Sometimes you're just being an
mm.
arsehole to yourself, you know. So so
Yeah.
what do you put into place for yourself and
So
others?
I apply a sort of I call it a lens or a perspective. So I coach entrepreneur men, and entrepreneur men classically have very high standards. And what that means is when they reflect, they're often quite self-deprecating because it's like, oh, I should be better. And while that feedback loop serves you, you have to apply a lens of compassion. So before we go into the self reflective practice, whether it's a journaling or a meditation or something, we say to ourselves, I'm sat here to reflect and think about where I'm at and the things that I'm struggling with. And I do so with a sense of compassion for myself and love for myself. I'm doing this to improve, not because I'm not good enough, but because I want to be better. And I view everything that I'm going to think and feel through a lens of love, not through a lens of fear or not enough. And as soon as you apply that, and I'm not going to say it fixes things straight away, but like anything, it's a muscle. You know, if you start to have a gratitude practice, you don't feel really grateful overnight, but over time, you start to learn what the energy of gratitude feels like. And a lot of men have a very disordered relationship with the word love. Like if
Mm,
I asked many men, like, do you love yourself? Most men would be like, what, mate? Fucking what? And then
yeah.
there'll be a load of other men that would probably be like, well, I don't really know how to answer that. Like, love, like, well, and again, you practice it. What does it feel like to love myself? What does it feel like to approach my behavior through the lens of love? Because ultimately, everything that I'm doing right now in my behavior is serving me. It's either helping me to control my environment or keep me safe or whatever it is. So even if you view something that you're doing through a negative lens, it is actually positively serving you right now. But the journey is to working out why it's pulling, why it's there, so that we can kind of unlock it. Because ultimately, everyone is operating from a place of truth, but it's within their own current truth and within their own current awareness and understanding of their self. But the journey to greater truth is peeling back the mistruths that are not true.
Ah, it's so true. One of the greatest gifts I ever gave myself was I gave myself permission to be compassionate to myself and to
Mm,
learn. One of the things I struggled with as an adult, reflecting back as a kid, was I felt guilty. I felt guilty for not stopping my father from being violent, from not stopping him from hurting my siblings, my mum, all of those things. And actually, what I'd done is I had experienced a different emotion, and that was helplessness. So actually, I was helpless, and because I am who I am, or was who I was, however you want to look at it, I wasn't having that. Helpless, me? Nah, that's not who I am. I'm a former professional wrestler. I do boxing, I do jiu-jitsu, I do all this stuff. I'm not that guy. So instead, I turned it into guilt because it felt productive. Felt like I was doing something. I could blame somebody. I could blame him. I could blame myself. All those different things. And I think a lot of men do that. A lot of men do that. We have these emotions that we don't particularly want, even though they're true. They are how we
mm,
feel. We're
Mm.
helpless, we're hopeless, we're scared. That's another one. Quite often, fear becomes anger, right? And we have these emotions, and instead of having these emotions, processing these emotions, listening to the messages that are emotions, we then decide to change the emotion to something that we think is, yeah, it's that we prefer it. And I can imagine that happens a lot with compassion. So with men, how would you talk that alpha male, that guy who's, you know, two or three shots away from being Andrew Tate? How would you convince him to be compassionate and to use that language with himself?
So in the coaching journey, a tool I use a lot is just a challenge,
Mm.
and to challenge someone on their thinking and whether it's serving them. So I'm not here to dictate your journey. I'm here to uncover the truth of your journey and guide you on the path. So I might sit in front of a man and he might talk through a situation, you know, how he's controlling things, how his life's is at the moment. And I might say, okay, well, how is that serving you right now? How does being emotionally blunt serve you right now? Because a huge problem that I have with nearly all of my clients is there is no emotion. Like it's like they've muted themselves from anger, from frustration, from love, from happiness, and they just live within this really narrow bar of, yeah, I'm all right, mate. Like it's just there. Whereas if I was to coach a woman for an hour, we might cry, we might laugh, it goes all over the place. And like, what would I say to that person? Well, so many of the people that I coach and I see, I'm like, how happy are you? How much joy do you feel? Like when you go to your child's recital, do you feel that massive pang of emotion where you just want to cry and be like, I'm so proud of you? I'm like, if you don't feel that, that's not normal. We should feel that. We're humans. We are a whole mix of emotions. And not allowing the emotion to be strong enough doesn't allow A, for us to experience life fully and our humanness. And B, it doesn't allow us to use the emotions to drive change. Because if an emotion's not strong enough, you will not change. That's why a man might get to like burnout, like mild burnout, but it doesn't feel bad enough to change. And then it's like, boom, you burn out big, and now you're angry, and now you're frustrated, and the anger and the frustration is big enough that you now do something about it. But because before we were shielding ourselves so much from it, holding on to so much, not letting it all in, that we didn't see those signs of like something needs to change. Like if you're angry, there's a reason, especially if it's ongoing. It's like resurfacing. And a classic one is someone goes to their job and they're like, I feel angry. I'm like, yeah, you hate your job, but you won't admit it to yourself. So you're not able to move on. So you mute the anger, say that it's normal, or I've got to do this, or this job is good for me, it's safe, whatever. And then you never do something about it. And then you become even worse at listening to your own body because you've become very good at pushing everything away. So I raise a challenge, and unfortunately, this process usually takes quite a while for a man to come round to the idea that actually Ben's been saying this thing for like 3, 4, 5, 6 months now. Nothing's changing. I'm expecting a different result. I want to keep going alpha. And it's like, actually, and from my coaching experience, most men have a very out of touch connection with their feminine side and an overtly, mildly toxic relationship with their alpha side, their masculine side. And one of the mistakes that I did in my journey is I became almost too feminine. And the feminine helped me heal. It grounded me. It filled me with love and compassion and empathy. But not holding on and working on that masculine a little bit, it kind of really damaged my business because it removed my drive and my action orientated energy. So I try and when I'm coaching, have this real balance of like, we've got to manage the feminine and bring it in, but also hold on to the masculine so we don't lose momentum and inspiration, which drives a lot of a man's behavior.
Honestly, the way you explain things, absolutely fantastic. It really is. I mean, when I think about compassion for men, I think it's like these glasses. I think if these glasses are compassionate, what it does is it helps with the sustainability, because, like you said, that fear mindset can drive a man or a person, whichever, really quite far. But if you're going to sustain it, you have to be able to be compassionate to yourself. And what does that mean? I think what it means is these glasses, these compassion glasses, allow you to see the emotions of the truth, of how you feel, of what's going on in your life, so that you can make decisions. Otherwise, you go through life thinking that you're making decisions, but you're not. You're just responding, reacting to anything, like a pinball in a pinball machine. You're just reacting all the time, and you've got no direction, and therefore you feel like you're helpless and purposeless because all this stuff is just happening around you. And I love the way that what I got a sense of when you were talking then is a real encouragement to anchor, to have this sort of like this place where you can go within yourself, where you accept and you honor the truth about what's going on, because that's true. It's also the same when you got together when you were 20 and now you're 40 odd years old and you're in this relationship and you just changed, both of you. You know, parenthood, all of these different experiences in life have changed you to a point where you no longer want to be together. But instead of making that really difficult decision, having that really uncomfortable conversation and hurting the children and all those things that come with it, you just double down. No, we're going to stay together. And then the resentment builds up, and inevitably, in some cases, some people make terrible decisions and all of that sort of stuff. Same with the job. You know, somebody has the job they hate, you know, and they keep going day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, until it just completely strips them of their personality. The only way they can survive is to not have emotions, because if they had their emotions, they'd felt like going crazy all the time. It's one of the reasons that my addiction to alcohol became what it was. It was because it worked. It numbed me. I didn't feel anything anymore, which wasn't, it was helpful in the time, but it certainly wasn't a solution, not the long-term one. So I really,
And
really, I feel sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the alcohol conversation is really huge, because if I think back to moments when I've drunk more, and I wouldn't say I've ever been a drinker or drunk recreationally to have fun and get laid and all those things in my 20s. And then it kind of became this tool of when I felt a strong emotion, I would drink. And because you create your world, and then when you're resisting and pushing against your world and you're feeling the anger and the frustration, you're like, well, I don't want to feel that. It's uncomfortable. So it's like, well, if I have a glass of wine, it kind of all just settles down, and then I just sort of relax and I forget and I become a different person. But again, you blunt the signal, and those
Mm,
signals are there. And actually, one of the most powerful things you can do, and this is why I like extreme experiments, because it really shows you what's happening. Like, if you do dry January, no offense, it's easy. Everyone's doing it. It's just a thing. 30 days, anyone can do anything for 30 days. No, at least do it for 3 months. So you have enough time to have to lean into that, like, oh, God, this is that moment where I would usually drink and I feel
mm,
uncomfortable. Now I've got to sit in my discomfort. Good. That's where change happens, sitting in your discomfort. But we're so good at running away from discomfort now. We've got social media. We can just pop open, flick. Oh, I'm feeling a bit low. It's cool. I'll scroll Instagram for 30 minutes and I've kind of forgot that I was feeling angry or whatever. Like, if someone is listening to this podcast thinking, how can I get closer to truth after today? My advice would be turn everything off. Delete your social media for a month. Stop watching box sets on Netflix. Stop filling your time with shit things and fucking sit with yourself. Give yourself 30 days and start to sit in all of that discomfort and write down where your anger's coming from. Write down why you're feeling sad. Write down why you're feeling guilty. Write it all down. Because if you keep putting noise in, and I don't care if you stop listening to Johnny and me and everyone else on the internet, you've got to stop putting things in and expecting solutions. You need to go within yourself and find the solutions. And again, it sounds like an extreme experiment, but like, it's life changing. Just like going on a retreat to Bali for a week where you've got to turn off all the noise. That's why people do go away on retreats and change their life, because it was just enough time and stimulus to go, my life is not good. This is what I want to change. And then, but you can do it at home, but you've got to stop putting things in when you need to just sit with what is within.
Mate, absolutely spot on. And it's so funny because as you were saying that, I could hear voices of clients and people that I know, friends that I know that might listen to this, and I could feel how uncomfortable that suggestion would make them. And I suppose what I'd say to that is that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the actual point. And one of the things that you said there was about dry January, try it for 3 months. It's like anything. You got to go through all the seasons. You got to go through all the seasons with something and feel all of the different situations to know how it feels, to know that you're okay, and to find that there's this point where you really feel like you have to drink. Well, no judgment, but that's very interesting. That's very
Mm.
interesting that that's how you feel, because what that brings me to isn't something I sort of intended to talk about, but I feel like we're moving in that direction anyway. Is that tendency for people, men, women, whoever, to want to escape. There's a lot of information within that. And people, like you were alluding to then, people are doing it with social media, with porn, with box sets on Netflix, with well, endless things. So what do you think, first of all, what are the signs that someone should look out for when it comes to escaping? What do you think it means? And how do you think people should tackle that? It's a big question.
Oh, that is a big question. Um, so when I used to coach weight loss, I used to have this thing called the 30-second rule. And before they were able to eat anything, they had to wait 30 seconds. So you'd get the food out of the fridge, you'd put it on the worktop, and you'd look at it for 30 seconds. And that was enough time to break the habit loop and be like, do I want to eat that thing? Now you can apply that in any area of your life. Okay, I'm about to have a drink. I'm about to go on social media. I'm about to ring a friend, whatever. What's my actual intention behind this? Okay, 30 seconds is enough time to notice the behavior. Actually, I'm going on social media because I feel uncomfortable about the thing that I should be doing for my work or my job. And I'm using social media as a form of procrastination because I'm hitting this kind of brick wall with it. I'm pouring a drink because I feel angry, and actually I should probably just sit with my anger and having the drink. So actually just having this conscious effort of just trying to put a pause in and say, why am I actually doing this? And am I ready to confront the truth? And that's fine if you're not. That's okay. But at least recognize it, because everyone has a capacity to change. Some people it's small. Okay, so start small. Confront small battles. If it's big, start to confront everything. Go for it. Um, so yeah, creating space. And that's why I'm a huge fan of just being brutal in life and trying to trim all the fat of time. Like when I coach people, one of the first processes I put them through. So my coaching operates through operating systems a lot. So I have this thing called the time game operating system. And I have this because most people in life, entrepreneurs included and non, are too busy to develop themselves. They're working all the time, then they've got kids and gym, and like life's really busy. So when you think about free time, they're like, okay, when I've put the kids to bed, I've had dinner, it's 9 o'clock at night, I've got an hour free. I'd usually sit in front of telly, watch the TV. I'm like, okay, you're giving your worst hour to of the day. You've got the most minimal mental, emotional, physical bandwidth to develop yourself. So one of the initial things I try and do is create time. So what do we have to say no to? That extra work that you're doing, do you need to do it? That extra thing that you said yes to help your friend, do you need to do it? Because if you want to work on yourself, you're going to need time. And for a good long period of time, I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and meditate for an hour every day. I don't do it anymore. But for me, that was my commitment to being like, I need to sit with this stuff. I need to really allow enough time for me to confront all that's coming up for me. And that was my commitment to it. I wasn't able to do that till I created the time and created the space and created enough mirrors in my life for me to see what it was I then needed to work on.
I love what you said there, because what it says to me, it says many things, but one of the things that was highlighted to me at the beginning was what you're doing is you're giving yourself enough time to implement choice. So, and you said, you can still do the thing if you want to, but at least then you've given you enough time to feel the emotions, to assess it, to look through it and make whatever decision it is you need to make. But you're making a choice, you're doing it deliberately. And I think that escapism, I experienced it. Well, I can't remember how long ago it was quite a while ago, where I was watching the TV show with my wife and she went off to the loo and the adverts came on. And I started scrolling on my phone. So then I realized that the program has started again. So I rewound it, but I rewound it a bit too far. And there was an advert or so just until the program started again. Started scrolling again and missed it again. And I was just like, this is not me choosing this. Like, this is something going on here. And I think it's that, isn't it? It's that choice. It's that realizing that it's not good or bad what you're doing. It's about whether or not you're choosing it. And sometimes when people are escaping, they're just doing it, and then they wonder how they got so carried away with it. Well, they didn't really even choose it. It was just a reaction or whatever. And the other thing with it was the emotions piece. I believe, and I'd love to hear what you think, I believe emotions are messages. And I believe that they're the only real-time feedback that we get about how we really feel. And I also think a lot of the time we tell ourselves that we shouldn't feel this way, or it's wrong to feel this way. We probably, like you said at the beginning, probably hear our parents' voices or someone we hold in high regards voices saying, I should or shouldn't feel that way. And instead of just listening. And like you said, I'm angry about something. Okay, anger. Anger is usually about injustice. Anger is usually a sign that a boundary's been crossed and I need to put it back in place. Okay, maybe I should listen to that. What's going on here? It's an opportunity. Because as well, what I've often noticed is when someone's angry, they're very rarely confused too. They generally know what they're angry about. Now, their anger might be unwarranted. They might have misunderstood the situation, but the anger is real. And the anger is something that is giving you something. It's. I stopped short of calling it a gift because I feel like I'd punch myself in the face for saying that. but it is a message. And I think a lot of our emotions are messages. How do you feel about emotions?
Totally agree. I wouldn't change what you said was beautiful and eloquent. And what I'd add to it is one of the things that I end up coaching a lot is people really owning what it is that they want.
Hmm.
So if they don't own what they want, they have to live in a state of anger and frustration because they're not living their truth. And many men will suppress what it is that they want because, oh, I don't want to be too ambitious, or I don't want to, be too extreme or whatever. Because we get these messages from people, like if someone gets really into marathon training, they might be like, oh, you're getting a bit extreme. Like you really get into marathons, like you flew to Spain to run a marathon. And it's like, oh, well, perhaps I won't name that need because now that's negative and my friends are talking negatively and stuff. And when we have these emotions, anger, frustration, sadness, it's probably because we're not naming our needs. And quite often, we're not naming our needs to our partner, which is really, for most people, the only permission we actually need because it's going to affect the home. Like if you say, oh, I want to go away to so and so, then your partner might be like, well, okay, we need to navigate, the kids, whereas everyone else, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, you might need to change some things if your world around you needs to change. So, if you wanted to change job, okay, that changes your world around you a little bit. But without you doing that, without you naming your needs, you don't go on the path to happiness. And we're allowed to want things. We're allowed to name what it is that we want. The problem is we get caught in this habit of life. And that habit of life is we go to work, we see people at the weekend, we take our kids to their sports days, and we just get caught in this rhythm and we don't zoom back enough. So every year, me and my wife, at the beginning of the year, between Christmas and January, the kids go to their grandparents and we go on this long walk. And on this long walk, we talk about our year, what we want to achieve. We check in with each other. We name our needs. Like I ask questions like, how am I showing up for you as a husband? How am I showing up as a dad? Am I doing a good job? Tell me where I fucked up this year. and we go on this massive walk and we talk about like everything. And then periodically, usually when we go on holiday, and quite often we'll go on holiday to Portugal, grandparents will come, we'll get a day, half day to ourselves, and we'll kind of check in on this stuff. And we get to openly name our needs. And what I've often found in relationships and coaching is men can be quite good at not naming their needs, but what I would say is just doing them. Like, oh, I want to go and watch the football with the mates at the weekend. It's just like, okay. And because women tend to be more grounded, looking after the kids, like their first thought is the children, the home environment. Quite often, the man will often get their needs met more than the woman just by proxy and just by behavior and just by natural masculine and feminine energy. But if you want to thrive as a couple and thrive as a human, you have to name your needs, and then you have to work with the other people in your life to make sure they're equally naming their needs, and you work together to live a big life. Like, I don't want my wife to just be like the supporter of my needs and my business.
Yeah.
She's her own human. She deserves to have all of her needs met, all of her goals met, and achieve everything so that she's happy, so that she doesn't live with resentment.
Oh, mate, it's such a beautiful way of framing that, because I think some men forget that they love their wives and that they should want to see them happy. And I think they get caught up in some of their own pursuits, not on purpose. I'm not saying that it's on purpose. I think it's it makes you think. I told you when I saw you last time about my father and the way he was, and recently he passed away. And I was speaking to Donna Lancaster on a podcast earlier this year, and she said, "It sounds to me like it took your father to die for you to get to know him." And when I was going through all the boxes of his stuff, I had this very powerful realization, because I was looking through and I read letters from his family back to him. I saw lots of boxes of schoolwork, of university work. And one of the letters was that his mum worked selling fish on the roadside so that he could come to the UK and become a pharmacist. So he traveled from Nigeria in Africa to the UK to become a pharmacist. And I saw these 2 boxes of schoolwork, of university work, pages and pages of handwritten pads, loads of books, loads of information. I saw this man's passion. I saw this man's hope, this man's ambition. I saw it all. And then somewhere along the line, he had to abandon that, or he felt he did, because he had a family, because he had me, by mistake, clearly. And then he had subsequently had more children. And for the first time in my life, I was able to, now I'm not justifying, he did some very cruel and he tortured us as children. He did some very, very bad things. He obviously got very deep into his anger and his hate. But what I saw for the first time was somebody who lived with a lifetime of resentment. He never got to, he got to that point in life where he's like, I wonder what it would have been like if I'd just made it. And he had to let go of that dream. And what that says to me is, okay, I've got a better way, not of justifying it, but of understanding him. I understand him. I understand that this was a man living with resentment. This was a man that was white knuckling every day. Every single day from the moment he woke up to he went to sleep. He didn't want this life. He never chose this life. That's not why he left Nigeria. And again, it doesn't justify it. But what it does for me is it gives me a couple of things. It gives me peace in the fact that it wasn't me, that he didn't hate me, and that it wasn't my fault. But what it also makes me understand, and it's a lesson from the grave of like, don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your hopes. Show up as a dad, show up as a husband, exactly as you said, but don't give up on your own stuff, because all that will do is it will slowly poison you. It's like when you tip cordial into water and you just see slowly it just consumes the whole thing. And that's what resentment does in my eyes. And you really made me think about that then when you were saying it, because I only just found that out when he died. You know, I got to look through those boxes and I see that life. And now, again, it doesn't justify it, but it really helps me understand why it's so important for you, and it is your responsibility, to take control of your life and to face these things that are true, to face these emotions, these messages, so that you can do the things that you want to do. Again, you have to be considerate of the other people in your life, but don't abandon yourself. Don't abandon yourself.
Never. Mate, that was a beautiful share. I really felt that. And I think what we're seeing now, especially as I'm a parent and I'm very vested and interested in becoming a great parent and doing the best job I can. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing a huge shift in awareness of what I'll just quote good parenting looks like, because we are very fortunate as a generation to have been now growing up in the information age. So, previous to like 30, 40 years, the only way to really be a better parent is maybe read like one or two books down your local library. You live quite an insular life, so you quite often will grow up in the same community. And in your instance, dad came over from Nigeria, but then probably set up his family life somewhere, and it's quite small. Whereas now we live in a global community. We've got all this research on parenting and child behavior. We've had this huge curve in awareness of like, whoa, okay, actually, being really harsh with my children actually is doing the opposite to what I think it is, because they now don't feel close. They don't feel loved. Whereas all the generations previously, who, to be fair to them, were in survival mode, like literally their whole, like, we've got to find shelter, we've got to find food, we've got to make ends meet, and we've got to keep going. Whereas now, we live in a totally different world. We've got water running through our taps. Everyone's got roofs over their heads for the most part. Don't get me wrong. Um, we live in a totally different world. We don't need to operate from a place of scarcity anymore. We are the first generation that can live in genuine love and abundance, because the world that previous generations have built for us affords us the opportunity to sit in this world where it's like, wow, I don't really want for a lot. And that's another reason why I think men are struggling mentally, because a lot of us are not building things that matter anymore. Previous generations were building roads and homes and forms of communication and aeroplanes and all sorts of stuff. And we're now like, oh, should we build that AI that might replace loads of jobs? Like, and so many people are like, whoa, yeah, what kind of world are we building now? And I think we're going to enter in this massive level of consciousness shift over the next 5 to 10 years, or I hope so, where we actually are seeing the world that we live in totally differently, that we can all live in love and abundance and joy, because we don't have to fight anymore. We're not scrabbling. We don't have to play the scarcity game. We don't have to live in fear. It's a totally different energy, but people have to first see it. And when I look at the generations, behind me, I'm like, okay, I see what you had to deal with. It is incredibly different to what I'm having to deal with. I've got a smartphone. I can order whatever the fuck I want. You, you might have had to walk a day to get some of the things that I can get in like literally 2 minutes. The world we live in is so different. And I suppose to your point, it's like I look back on the generations that built me with so much compassion, because I'm like, Jesus, I probably would have done the same, given, and I can sit here from my perch of high awareness with all the books that I've read, all the podcasts I've consumed. I'm like, you were just trying to put food on the table. That was it.
Yeah, and again, like, because you speak so well on these things, it makes me realize one of the things I've always said about my dad was that he was always a good provider. Like, he always got up really. He ended up being a welder, so he'd be up really early in the morning to go to the next town on the train, and he'd weld all day. In the winters and the summers, Hertfordshire summers were savagely hot. So I just, I suppose for the first time in my life, I'm building a level of respect that I think always should have been there in the first place. But I wanted to respect him, I wanted to love him, but he made it really difficult. He really did make it really difficult. And what I'm being careful of, though, is I think sometimes in death, especially complicated grief, people have this tendency to want to redesign the narrative, and I'm just watching that because that's something that's very alluring and tempting. But um This conversation has gone nowhere I thought it would go. Got a whole bunch of questions that I never
But
asked.
everywhere it was meant to go.
Well, that's often what I say about this podcast. We start that question, how did you become who you are? Often sets off on a path that is is always wonderfully perfect in a sense. But there was one question on here that it feels important, because what we're talking about and what this podcast is about becoming the human being that you want to be. And very often I say to people, the word human being is about being. It's about actually being who you are. And like you said so beautifully earlier, blocking out all the messages of others so that you can hear yourself think, you can hear what your own desires, your own ambitions, your own wants. And what we're talking about in this moment for many is change. We're talking about making changes in their life, and whether it's in the fitness industry, which is a job I did previously, or whether it's in self-development, or whether it's all of it all together, because it's kind of all the same in a weird kind of way. The question that I've got here is, because again, we talked about emotions. What emotions show up when someone tries to change their health? Shame, control, fear, rebellion, all of those things come up. And which ones do you see silently sabotaging people the most?
Shame is
Yeah.
probably the biggest saboteur.
What is that?
What is it? Why is it? Do you know what? This is an area of like self-development for me in terms
Mm.
of there's a course that I really want to do called Internal Family Systems.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I don't know, have you done it?
I haven't done the full course, but I've other courses I've done have had elements of it, which I've found fascinating.
Yeah. And I really want to do that because I really want to understand a lot more of how emotion kind of drives behavior. And I think one of the things that I've done a lot over the last couple of years is just get really close to my own emotions. Um, and of course, I've observed many emotions in clients, and I use certain techniques to help them sit with it and process it. But like when it comes to shame, we can't change the reality that we live in. So our past is our past, it's behind us. And we look at the world out there through rose tinted glasses. Like everyone's life's better, easier, whatever. And what projects back on us by default is the shame that our life is the way that it is. And you might sit there and think, oh, well, I feel shameful that, I've not had this upbringing, or I didn't have this, or I didn't have that. And it's like, can't change any of it. And one of my favorite books is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And
Love
it's,
that book. Yeah.
yeah, it's a good masculine book, but it's important. It's a powerful read because it's like whatever is in your world, whatever truth exists, you own it. And yes, I would love to sit here and say loads of the things that I've had to work with, I wish they hadn't happened. Same for you. I wish they hadn't happened, but they happened. And I have to deal with them because if I want to break through and become the man I'm meant to be or am, not be, am, then I need to work through this stuff and only I can do it. And it's my responsibility. And that shame, it doesn't serve me anymore. So I'm going to let go of that shame and have the courage to work through what I need to work through. And actually, when you really bring people into that, watch your world open up. Like, is literally every man I've ever coached has never been ever 100% honest with their partner. Never. There is bits that they hide because they're shameful of it. Now, they might not have all full awareness of the stuff that they need to share, but we do that because we feel that they won't love us. Oh, that thing that happened to him that makes him like that, if I really share that, they won't love me. Well, if you are in a genuine, loving, deep, meant to be relationship, that person will open up a bit of their soul that you've probably not even seen by opening up yourself. And you cannot be helped unless you truly open up and expose yourself. And yes, it feels vulnerable, but it's the only path to truth, to opening up. And there's recent things that I've done that with myself, with my wife. And I've done it because there's things that have come up from my childhood where I'm like, whoa, I buried that really deep. But actually, it now started to affect my relationship because it manifested into something. It manifested into a dynamic and created a situation. So I had to deal with it. And off the back of it, only beautiful things have happened because I'm still the same me. I've just shared a bit of you. And like we do, like when you expose those bits, it sets you free in a new way because you get to pave over it. You
Mm.
get to take control of it rather than leave it in the dark. You've now shined a light on it. And you're like, well, okay, this is how we build a bridge over that.
Yeah, you stop reacting to it because you
Yeah.
can become aware of it. You know, mate, I really felt that what you just said. And there's something I'll share with you that really helped me is that I realized really early on that I was always trying to process events in my life. And there was a lot of them. There's a lot of really horrible things that I ended up having PTSD because of. And I was always trying to process those events, process those events. But as you rightly say, we're not time travelers. We can't go back in time. We can't change things that have happened. We just can't do it. So what am I actually doing? Well, I'm experiencing difficult emotions that are attached to those events. And that was the bit that I could own. I couldn't own my father's behavior. I couldn't own the things that have happened to me in the past. I couldn't change them. I couldn't do any of these things. But the only way forward for us when something has happened is acceptance. And I'm not talking about forgiveness. I'm talking about acceptance. And a lot of people confuse acceptance. They think, "Oh, I'm working on acceptance. I'm trying to accept." Well, I go, "There's your problem," because acceptance isn't a doing word. There's nothing to do. It is just accept it as it is. So, can I accept that my father was the way he was? No, of course I can't, because I don't want to, and I don't feel that I I am able to in this point. So, what am I accepting? I'm accepting the way I feel about it, because that belongs to me. And that's why these emotions are so important, I think, because I can accept that I was disappointed by my father's behavior. I can accept that I was scared by his behavior. I can accept that I was helpless by his behavior. These are all things that as soon as I say them to myself and I know that they are true, I instantly want to back away from them, because helplessness becomes guilt, and fear becomes anger, and all of these emotions, I'm like, no, I'm not going to have them. I won't. And then all I'm doing is becoming further and further away from who I'm supposed to be. I'm defending myself all the time. It's tiring. It's absolutely tiring. When all I needed to do was not accept the events, because I'm not responsible for those. They are his to accept. What I accept is how I feel about them. And as soon as I realized that, because there was a moment with him when I went back to him, I spoke to him, and I realized who he was, and I was like, okay, there's nothing here for me anymore. So what I walked away with was, okay, I accept that I was helpless. I accept that I was scared. I accept those things. And it's funny, as soon as I did it, they lost their power. Because that's shame, right? As soon as you say it out loud, it's no longer got its energy and its power anymore. Now, I don't know if that's helpful. I figure you're further along than that. But for me, I was always trying to, the shame only existed when I was trying to accept the events instead of the emotions. I think that's what I'm trying to
Mm.
say.
No, and it's really powerful. So the journey of therapy taught me a lot of acceptance and understanding, and then creating kind of like better coping mechanisms. But what I learned through kind of studying the brain and observing myself is, you might sit in a therapy based session, or you might speak to just a friend who's good at listening and conversing, and you might uncover something, and it brings awareness, and then it brings a certain amount of peace that you've kind of found a bit of an answer, and you kind of, the emotion kind of settles. And let's just say the emotion goes from an 8 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10. Now, this might be because of the volume of stuff that happened in my past that I've had to deal with, which I don't know, I've been told it's quite a lot, and, had to work through it, whatever. If it's a 4 out of 10, it's still there. And what I've been fascinated with is the role of the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So we sit in therapy, we talk, we journal, we work with the conscious mind. But the conscious mind's only 5%. Subconscious is 95%.
Hmm.
So we're doing all of our self-development in the conscious mind. Why are we not working with the subconscious, where actually all of these memory imprints live? So I'll give you an example. The big thing that happened over the last couple of months, which manifested between me and my wife and whatever, is something that's been happening my whole life, but I buried it so deep that I lost awareness of it. And basically, what happened is when I was 9 years old, I went to boarding school and I was put in a situation where I was sexually coerced by another boy. And long story short, that formulated in me not feeling safe around other men. Long story short, I won't go into detail. So I went through my whole adult life never being safe around another man, and I could feel it. Now, consciously, I would run this loop in my head of like whatever I needed to do to feel safe. And I won't talk about how that manifested itself, but I could feel that pull subconsciously of going, you're not safe. You're not safe. You're not safe. Now, I didn't want to be that man that lived with that habit loop in his brain. And this is what I've come to realize with some of these subconscious therapies where we're accessing a deeper state, where we're looking at the emotion that's stored within us from that memory imprint of that moment, and we're able to completely dissolve it of its power. So I get to take something from what is an 8 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10 to a 0 out of 10. Gone. Poof. And that's where I've really valued breath work. I have used psychedelics, but I don't anymore. I only use breath work because I found it just as powerful. In fact, I find it more powerful because, again, you're acting on the mirror. Like you're approaching what it is that you want to approach. Whereas psychedelics, it can be kind of quite random. It can take you off in quite a lot of different directions. And then trauma release based therapies that work more on a subconscious level. So with this situation that happened when I was 9, I've been able to go back into my subconscious and basically with an eraser, rub it all out and be like, that doesn't exist anymore. And the day that I did that session and kind of broke through that is the day that the next time I stood next to a man, I didn't feel that thing anymore that I felt my
Ah,
whole adult life and had to compete with. And this is what I want people to realize because I spent years in therapy and it helped me. It helped me become more aware. It helped me create better coping mechanisms, but it didn't really solve some of the things that I had to live with that I felt energetically, emotionally every day that I had to compete with on a conscious level. And that's when I started to delve into deeper therapies and say, right, can I actually remove this? It's like someone that has PTSD from an experience. Can we drop into that and actually literally rewire that person's experience of it? Because as we know, and this has been shown in, war zones, soldiers will go to war, something will happen, one man will get PTSD, the other man won't. So what happened? Well, his interpretation of that experience, the mark that it left on him.
yeah.
So we know that potentially there's an opportunity to go into the subconscious and look at that memory imprint and say, it wasn't like that. It wasn't actually what you thought it was. Um, and that's been an absolute game changer for me and why I've really, really bought into breath work as a tool because it also allows me to do it on a solo level. Like before I came onto this podcast, I did 45 minutes of breath work to work through something. I did it on my office floor and it was incredibly powerful. So I tell people this because I know a lot of people, like I've just taken on a client and in his sign up form, he's had 147 therapy sessions. And I was like, that's a lot of therapy. And he's nowhere where he wants to be. He's stuck in these thought loops. There's a lot going on. Now, credit to him, he realizes that and he's taken a big step. But I'm like, you'd expect a lot of progress from 147 sessions, but it's because we're only working on the conscious brain. We've got to drop into the subconscious because that's where a lot of it's held.
Mate, thank you so much for sharing that. That was That was so powerful. That was so powerful to hear that. And, like you say with therapy, I think it's a great tool for intellectualizing your history, the history of you. But I think there's a somatic element to it that needs to be that only breath work and other things that are somatic can actually get near. And I don't know if it's the right thing to say or not, but I'm really proud of you, man, because that's some hard shit. It really is. And I'm really, really proud of you, man. And, I didn't think I could respect you anymore, but I do. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Mate, I wouldn't believe it, but we've been talking for over an hour. And you're like, no, I can believe it. It feels like it. But, I'm just going to finish here with a question I ask everybody. And that is there anything you'd like to pass along to anyone that could help them with their self-development?
I think based on today's conversation is sit down with the most important person in your life and own where you're at and own your needs and own the journey. And I think as a man, we fall into the trap that, okay, if I do that, I need a plan. I fucking have no idea what the plan is to walk this journey. It's alien to me. You need to drop that mindset because it's holding you back. So, for example, you might sit down and you sit down with your partner and say, right, I actually regularly feel quite angry. I feel frustrated. Yeah, I'm not the man I want to be. And I'm telling you this because I want to own it now. I want to stop hiding from it. I don't actually have the plan figured out. I'm just telling you this because you're the closest person to me in my life and I want you to support me. And 99.9% of people are going to turn around when they're in a loving and beautiful relationship and go, wow, like, thank you for sharing that with me. I see you on a totally different level. I support you. Let me know what it is that you want to do. What do you need? More time, more money? What do we need to do? Um, because unless you bring that person in, they can't truly help you. They can't hold you. And in coaching, we talk about this phrase called holding space. So when I sit with my clients, I hold space for them to verbalize, to pour out. And all you're doing is asking permission for space to grow into. And you don't have to have a plan of what that growing into looks like. You just have to say, can I have the space?
Mm.
And that person's going to sit there and go, wow, at the end of this, I'm probably going to have a more loving, more powerful, more grounded husband. Yeah, great. Like, who wouldn't want that? Actually, your anger is seeping out into the family home and you do snap at the kids a lot and blah, 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 blah. So own that and bring her in and just watch the magic happen.
You're an incredibly special person, mate. Even if I yeah, absolutely incredible. What great perspective. Um, how can people find you? Where can they find you? And is there anything you want to direct people's attention to that you're doing at the moment?
No, if you want to come follow, I'm Ben Coomber on the internet. I don't have a particular thing I want to promote or anything. I coach 1 day a week, entrepreneur men. I coach men to freedom. That's been my journey over the last couple of years is freeing myself from everything that held me back. So that's what I coach men with now. And then my day job is I'm the CEO of a supplement company called Awesome Supplements. So if anyone wants to check that out, then they're welcome to as well.
Is there anything around that you want to add, like what the supplements are for, or anything like that, or do you think they'll work that out?
Well, I mean, I built the company years ago because I've been obsessed by human performance. And supplements were always this fascinating area of mine of like, oh, what are those like 2, 3, 4% that we can add to improve X, Y, and Z? And I actually found that there's potentially a huge amount of mileage in supplementation. Like a few key ingredients can really, really help. Like in the modern age, most people are really deficient in magnesium. vitamin D, zinc. Like if you train, creatine's amazing. Like if you do, running and train hard, electrolytes. So like it kind of fascinated me, and it was on top of my coaching because I've always worked in the kind of health, fitness, and nutrition space. Before a couple of years ago, like it just felt like a real natural progression for me, and I felt that the industry just wasn't telling the truth, wasn't acting
Mm.
with integrity, wasn't putting what they should do in their supplements, wasn't making it taste awesome. And I was like, hey, why don't we build the most awesome supplement company in the world? So that's what I'm trying to do, build the most awesome supplement company in the world while freeing men as my side hustle.
Oh, just one or two bits on then. Mate, you're an absolute legend. I'm so grateful for your time, for your wisdom, for your efforts, for your sharing, all of it. You're like I say, you're a special man. And I'm really excited about people listening to this. I think they're going to get a lot from it. And on this front, especially men, because I know a few clients that I think might want to listen to this. They know who they are. So thank you, mate. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for everyone listening. And I'll see you next week for another episode of the Johnny Lawrence podcast.